So Newsweek printed an article yesterday, June the 3rd, and the title of this article is Russia Warns of Horsemen of the Apocalypse as Ukraine War Hits 100 Days. So this article is probably going to take off and be reprinted because that is a bold statement. The article says a high-ranking Russia official issued a warning to the international community, saying that the four horsemen of the apocalypse from the book of Revelation in the Bible's New Testament have already started their trip as Russia's invasion of the Ukraine reaches 100 days. So what does he mean by that? Russian Security County Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev, and I'm probably butchering this Russian name, you've just got to bear with me, said in a recent interview that one can believe that the horsemen of the apocalypse are already on their way and all hope is in Almighty God, the Russian state-run news agency TASS reported. Medvedev added that things have already been set in motion. However, one can still try to tone down this international situation. What things have been set into motion? I know he's been threatening strikes against the U.S., which to me is scary. TASS reported that Medvedev's comments during an interview with Al Jazeera TV were in response to one of his Telegram posts in May, which he mentioned 10 consequences of Russian sanctions that have been put in place throughout the world since the invasion began. The U.S. Treasury Department on Thursday announced a new series of sanctions against Russia, including one that targeted the yacht of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and it was used to meet with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. In February, the U.S. and allies in Europe agreed to remove certain Russian banks from the SWIFT banking system. In another blow to Russia's economy, in March, U.S. President Joe Biden issued a ban on Russian oil in the country, which he's also blaming for our gas prices being astronomical, even though we can be energy independent if he would just do it, but that's a whole different story. Also in March, as the U.S. and the U.K. announced sanctions on more than 20 Russian tech and media companies as well as 13 individuals. Sanctions have had a negative impact on Russia's economy. During the first 3 months of the year, it experienced slower than expected economic growth. In April, the UK said it believed Russia would suffer its deepest recession since the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Despite Medvedev's warning, he said all is not lost. We are ready to have a dialogue on all issues, but a respectful one that takes into account our sovereignty, our concerns, and is aimed at creating an indivisible security, not in the interest of individual countries, but indivisible security, he said, according to TASS. And then these 10 consequences can be reduced if we have the right discussions, if we negotiate the right way. So, what exactly does he mean by that? The horsemen of the apocalypse. Let's go to church a little bit here. And who are the four horsemen in Revelation? Their meaning and significance. And this is from Christianity.com, and I will put a link to this article along with the Newsweek article in the description. So the four horsemen in Revelation 6, and it says, "Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, 'Come.' And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer." And when he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people shall slay one another, and he was given a great sword. When he opened the third seal, I heard the living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be the voice in the midst of the four living creatures, saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine." When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him, and they were given authority over the fourth of the earth to kill with a sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by the wild beast of the earth. And that's Revelation 6, 1 through 8. And it says one of the more eerie parts of the book of Revelation includes 4 figures riding horses. Much intrigue has been built around these 4 characters featured in the book of Revelations that iconic art, books, and even movies such as X-Men Apocalypse have capitalized on these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. These 4 horsemen appear to symbolically portray 4 disastrous occurrences that will take place before the second coming of Jesus Christ. Historians have argued over whether these events have already happened or whether mankind has yet to experience them, but most evidence points to the fact that these have yet to take place, and I don't believe that they have taken place yet either. This article will endeavor to explain the characteristics of each one of the horsemen and how they will play an important role in the end times. The white horse and horseman. The first horse, a white one, seems to be bent on conquest. Its rider wears a crown and holds a bow. Some people have attributed the rider of this horse as the person of Jesus, as later in Revelation 19, Jesus rides a white horse. However, others have said that this is the Antichrist. The Antichrist does try to mimic works of the Messiah and can do such miracles. And he seems bent on conquering the world. This article aligns with the latter view. The bow he carries can represent violence. After 3.5 years of peace, which is in Daniel 9:27, he will wage war upon the saints. The fiery red horse and horseman. The next horse, a fiery red one, takes peace from the earth. He carries a large sword and blatantly represents war and violence. This makes sense to follow after the conquest-driven horse and rider. Conquest often leads to war. The Antichrist will seek to wage physical war as well as a spiritual war. Take, for instance, the abomination of desolation when he will place in the temple after the 3.5 years of peace, and that's in Daniel 9:27. He will take the lives of many in a physical and spiritual sense. Although many wars have ravaged the earth's history, none will quite wreak as much destruction as those that occur in the end times. So if Putin's warning that of the horsemen of the apocalypse, he's making some pretty scary threats. The black horse and horseman. This rider carries a pair of scales in his hands and seems to refer to a famine that will wipe out wheat and barley supplies and spare oil and wine reserves. Some scholars attribute this famine to the wars that occurred before it. Throughout history, those who tend to farm and contribute to food supplies yield such duties to fight in war. Because of this, the food supplies suffer and entire civilizations collapse. The pale horse and horsemen. Naturally, when food supplies dwindle and wars break out, death follows. The pale horse has the power of famine, plague, and to kill by the sword and by the wild beast. Sickness and famine often break out as a result of warfare, and this horse stands as no exception. And it says, have the four horsemen already come? Historians can often point to the 14th century as a time that echoed several of these apocalyptic events. The Crusades echoed the conquest of the first rider, and many great wars broke out, such as the Hundred Years' War, and famine and death overtook the land because of the bubonic plague and the Great Famine of 1315 through 1317. Nevertheless, history does have a way of repeating itself. Even if the events that transpired in the past reflected those in Revelation, we have yet to experience these again. But the importance for Christians today, all the horsemen appear to have power over a fourth of the earth, and surprisingly, are not the most devastating of the judgments to come upon the earth in the end times. Trumpets, thunders, seals, and other catastrophic events will follow. Christians during the end times will experience these horsemen. They will know death, disease, famine, and many trials. That sounds kind of familiar to what's going on today if you think about the pandemic and the supply chain issues and the baby formula issues and the inflation and the empty shelves at the grocery stores. The Antichrist, after all, will cut off food supplies from those who do not have the mark of the beast, which is located in Revelation 13:16 through 17, and he will kill and persecute many followers of Christ. But during that time, Christians can rest in the hope that Jesus will restore all things and make them right, that the faithful and true will ride upon his white horse and conquer death, famine, disease, and every pestilent thing. And that is one assurance that we as Christians do have. And I know things in the world might be scary right now, and the news, the sensational headlines that come out and the stories that come out. But if you just keep your eyes focused on Christ and his promises, it will help ease your mind. And as you see these things come to pass, and that's the glory that we have as Christians, and that's the comfort that we have. And that is all I have for this story. Y'all have a good day.